And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Starting off with tonight's weather, we have a system cutting across the southern panhandle here, bringing rain and snow into the southern areas, but dry, cold, and breezy for areas to the north here, and dry and cold here across southern Alaska. A few clouds in the interior, but still below zero, and then windy, warmer, and snowier up here along the Arctic coast as this system passes to the east. And then we've got some rain down here with another front for the Alaska Peninsula all the way out to Adak and Atka. And for tomorrow, this system tracks slowly eastward here, bringing snow across the into the eastern Arctic coast tomorrow afternoon, back down across the north slope into the Brooks Range area. Otherwise, continued dry, light winds in the interior with variable clouds extending possibly all the way down into the Susitna Valley. Just some variable clouds, though, and no change elsewhere with cold, dry conditions over much of the southeast coast and snow lingering there over toward Misty Fjords eastward to Hyder and the Stewart area, but dry and mostly clear and again cold elsewhere across the southeast coast. And this front continuing a chance of rain or continuous light rain, fog, and drizzle for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. And then for the day on Saturday, kind of a trough here, bring some moisture in, definitely increase the clouds here along the southern Kenai Peninsula with a slight chance of snow along the immediate coastline into the Barren Island areas, increasing moisture there on the east side of Kodiak Island. Still cold and windy over portions of the southeast coast. And then this front bringing more snow up into the southeastern portions or the eastern portions of the southern southeast coastal areas. And then we have that front moisture, that front dropping southward, bringing some clouds and light snow here over the eastern interior, all the way down into the eastern Alaska range. Otherwise dry and breezy northeast winds here for the western interior that extend out and cover much of the Bering Sea with dry conditions. Just some scattered showers expected here over the Aleutians. And for the coastal waters, for the southeast coast, we've got northeast winds at 20 to 30 knots here for the south coast and north coast, northeast 25 to 40 knots. Gale warnings there for Lynn Canal, north winds 35 knots, northeast at 30 knots for Stevens Passage, and Clarence Strait southeast at 15. And for the day on Saturday, east winds 20 to 30 knots for the entire stretch of the coastline, seas 10 to 14 feet, north at 30 knots for Lynn Canal, 25 knots from the north for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southeast winds 25 knots. And for the North Gulf Coast, northeast winds 20 to 25 knots tomorrow. Prince William Sound, northeast at 25, and Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, northeast winds at 10 knots, northeast 25 for southern Cook Inlet. Barren Islands, Kamishak Bay, northeast winds 20 to 30 knots. And then moving on to Saturday, gale warnings here for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay and southern Cook Inlet, for northeast winds at 35 knots, north 25 knots for northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 20 for Prince William Sound, and the North Gulf Coast here, northeast winds 20 to 30 knots. Kodiak Island, northeast winds 30 knots for the day on Friday, and northeast 25 there for Bristol Bay. 40-knot east winds here, south side of the Alaska Peninsula, seas up to 14 feet. East at 40 knots for the north side of the peninsula with 6 to 7 foot seas. And for the day on Saturday, north to northeast winds 25 to 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, northeast 25 for Bristol Bay, and northeast winds 25 to 30 knots for Kodiak Island. For the eastern Aleutians, we've got east to northeast winds 25 to 40 knots, northeast at 20 there for the central Aleutians, and the western area is looking at east to northeast winds at 10 to 15 knots. And for the day on Saturday, eastern Aleutians, northeast winds 25 to 35 knots, northeast at 25 knots for Adak and Atka. And for the western Aleutians, winds east at 25 to 30 knots. And for the southwest coast tomorrow, we've got east to northeast winds 25 knots, east at 25 for St. Lawrence Island, northeast 15 for Norton Sound. Pribilof Islands, that's where the strongest winds will be tomorrow, east at 30 knots, east at 25 for St. Matthew Island. And for Saturday, south of Nunivak Island, northeast winds 30 knots. Otherwise, for the Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, northeast winds at 20 knots, northeast 25 for Norton Sound. And St. Matthew Island, while the Pribilofs are looking at north winds 30 knots with 12-foot seas. Eastern Beaufort Sea coast tomorrow, south to southwest winds 15 to 20 knots. And behind that front, northwest winds 15 knots for the central and western Arctic coast. And the Chukchi Sea, south to southeast winds 15 to 25 knots. And for Saturday, the Chukchi Sea, east to northeast winds at 15 to 20 knots. East at 15 for the western Arctic coast. Central coast up here, northwest at 10. And west winds, west-northwesterlies 20 to 30 knots there for the eastern Beaufort Sea.